And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. I was entertaining myself a little by just playing some of these clips. And before we get to our great friend Jim Byrne from Pennsylvania, from Pittsburgh, I'm going to team up with a couple of, just selective clips from our great friend, the president.
Can you imagine Sleepy Joe, Crazy Bernie, or can you imagine any of these people up here doing what I'm doing? There'd be 200 people show up if they were president. If they weren't president, nobody would show up.
And for equal time,
with your help, you're going to be able to do that. Thank you.
And they want Joe. Joining us now, our great friend from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Jim Byrne joining us. Former chairman of the state Democratic Party, former mayor, former man of the world. Well, probably still the man of the world. Probably the number one Batman fan, at least in Pennsylvania. Good morning, sir.
It is good to be with you, my colleague in the Dark Knight comics, as always.
Well, who's the Dark Knight in this case? Are people buzzing about Joe Biden?
There's some buzz. There's as much buzz for Vice President Biden on the Democratic side as there might be for any of the other 50,000 candidates currently seeking the nomination. It's too soon, Kevin. There's some excitement for Joe from those pockets of the party that like him, but there's no front runner yet. I mean, he landed with a pretty decent splash yesterday, but it's a long way to go. So we have to see how this plays.
Well, I'm just wondering what's happened to your Democratic Party.
Could you be more specific?
Well, you've got AOC on one side, Elizabeth Warren, Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, Crazy Bernie. You've got, I can't think of all these people that are running for the presidency, and you, as someone who is a patriot, who has served his community and continue to serve his community, I'm just anxious your thoughts on people that want to get rid of the
Sure.
Electoral College.
Well, I'm not a big fan of this Electoral College abolishment. I'm not. I don't care which side of the aisle is advocating it. Normally, you see advocation for its eradication by the side that loses. So that, I guess, will be the Democrats this time. Next time, it'll be the Republicans. Look, the Founding Fathers put that in there for a reason, and you need some very, very clear and compelling evidence that it isn't working based on how it was intended to work. Losing an election when the process took its place and was run properly, in my opinion, is not enough of a reason. You've got to show some real irregularities and erratic results that are, in the opinion of our republic, with the involvement of all of our Americans, ample proof that it needs to be changed. And quite frankly, Kevin, I just don't see that right now.
Well, Jim, what about the Green New Deal?
Well, the Green New Deal on its face is well-intended. The devil is in the details. I mean, I think we can all agree that we can look for ways to diversify how we, utilize energy and what we can do to, save the planet. We have to be aware of the fact that there are issues out there. We can't disagree. We may disagree on the cause. But look, I mean, if you introduce it in a radical form or in an extreme form that is arguably difficult to achieve, A, on the ground, and B, with votes, well, then you have to go in there with a bill, like any other piece of legislation, and find what works, find what doesn't. You have to be able to make some compromise in order to effectuate the change you want. So on its face, I don't think it's workable. But if you listen to what folks are saying and find ways to negotiate a deal that everyone can live with, then yeah, I think we should continue with exploring the options. But in its current form, there's no way it's going to pass.
Now, as someone who has run the Democratic Party in the state of Pennsylvania, you know all the major players, Ed Rendell and others personally. They know you.
Oh, they know me. You can put it that way. Your listeners should Google Maverick Democrat Jim Byrne if they want to know more about me.
Well,
I wear that with a badge of honor.
I always want to say this. When it was the darkest for me in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, you were always my friend, and I always appreciate that, brother.
You're still my friend.
Well, and
you're still my friend, Kevin.
We had such a great time on TV and radio. But back to this, are Democrats looking forward to this massive primary season?
They are, actually. Ed Rendell is an elder statesman in Pennsylvania. For your listeners, he was the governor here for 2 terms, 8 years, up through and including 2010, 2002 to 2010. And I joke with Kevin because he didn't want me to be the state chairman, and I told him I was going to run anyway and let the voters decide, and I became state chairman. But Governor Rendell is not as much of a driving force as he once was. He's still well respected. Folks come to him for support and advice, and he has a wealth of knowledge. You'll need to look. The dynamic out here now, Governor Tom Wolf, of course, is one that people will go to. Senator Bob Casey. Then you have some backing out in Philadelphia. There's some folks out there, Mayor Kenny. In Western Pennsylvania, it's a little more difficult to find who the current elected leaders are. It's a little bit in flux out here. So you'll see the national power players focusing more on Harrisburg and Philadelphia. They'll come out here, but as far as having 1 or 2 people speaking for them in positions of elected Democratic office, that still remains to be seen. But Kevin, the reality of our party is this, and you know, folks will agree with me, some may not in this party. The Donald Trump victory, he won. There's no, I've never challenged that. I've never disputed that. He won fair and square. He's our president. But the Democrats needed to do soul searching. Why did they lose? Why did they pick a candidate that had so many flaws and vulnerabilities, Hillary Clinton, and then run on a platform which was essentially, we're not Donald Trump? It was a horrific campaign. I wasn't chairman then. Sorry, I wasn't there. I'm not going to wear that. There were so many other ways they could have gone. They could have vetted more candidates. So the party needed to have a little bit of an implosion. You had Donna Brazile and Debbie Wasserman Schultz flipping answers to questions to Hillary. The superdelegates, 400 for Hillary Clinton before she even announced, left a bad taste in a lot of new faces coming into the party. Why should I join this organization if there was a group of people making decisions before any of us get a chance to weigh in? So it hit the ground, and it hit hard. So it needs to reinvent itself. And I like to make the analogy to Hunt for Red October when Marco Ramius told his mutineers in the captain's galley that he had tipped off the Soviets that they were coming to kill him. Like, we either sink or swim right now, the Democrats. You have to get a candidate. You need to get a message. We're not Donald Trump doesn't work. Yes, yeah, the president's numbers are low. Yes, 35, 40%. But the thing is, so you can connect with those 60% and say, we're not happy with President Trump as the Democratic Party. All right, 60% of the people who aren't happy with him will agree with you. That's low-hanging fruit. Anybody can do that. Okay, Democratic Party, who's your candidate and what's your message? And until I get both, it's going to be the devil I know. So if the race for tomorrow, Donald Trump wins, the Democrats have about 12 months roughly, to start to coalesce and then to call this herd and start to get behind 1 or 2 people that can deliver a name and a message, or it's going to be 4 more years of Donald Trump.
Well, Donald Trump is great for us here on the right side, if you will. Jim Byrne joining us from Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. As a former mayor, what do you make of? And Jim, you and I are close to the same age. We've got miles in the odometer, and the older we get, the less we know. But we appreciate that. We appreciate learning things. What do you make of Mayor Pete there?
Well, let me just respond quickly to your comment about age. In the Old Testament, the book of Ecclesiastes nails it. Youth is wasted on the young, I think. But
yeah.
But no, it's Mayor Bill Peduto. And I think he's well-intended, but you need a thicker skin to be a mayor. Bill oftentimes internalizes.
No, I wasn't talking about the mayor of Pittsburgh. We can get to him and how, look, the only people that would talk to him back in the day would be you and me. And I can remember when then the estranged Bill Peduto talked about being a YouTube disc jockey playing the 80s hits, and now he's the mayor of Pittsburgh taking on the president. But before that, though, Mayor Pete Buttigieg of Fort Wayne, Pete. You as a former mayor, that is so near and dear to your heart. Your thoughts on him?
Well, he's in the fraternity. Serving as a mayor at any level, I served as 12 years for your listeners in a little borough called Millville, Pennsylvania, right next to the city of Pittsburgh, population about 4,000. It's a unique position. And when you make decisions at the mayor's level, especially in a smaller than a city size, a borough, a town, or something of that nature, 4 to 10, 15,000, you get up the next day and you're looking out your kitchen window, and the person whose life you just affected is looking across the fence right back at you. So when you're making decisions at that level, you better be making them for the right reasons, selfless for the institution, the greater good. Mayor Pete has done that. And there's some excitement around that. And people can appreciate, what a mayor brings to the table. Decision-making, grassroots, an ability in a mayor of a community to build consensus. A lot of diverse opinions come into that council chamber. A lot of diverse opinions come into those board meetings, into those borough development corporation meetings. And as a mayor of a community, you have to, the day after election, sit with the people who campaigned like crazy to get rid of you and build consensus with them. So he has a track record of doing that. Keep an eye on him. He may be right now at the first quarter turn, back in the middle of the pack somewhere. But I was impressed, with how much excitement after about a week or so he started to get. And we just have to see. It's too early, but sure, any of them are viable. But that mayor tag is certainly one that can work to his advantage for the reasons I just stated.
Our great friend Jim Byrne joining us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Okay, your mayor, Bill Peduto, has taken on the president several times, now being sued for the gun ban. And in light of the recent tragedy, not only in California but in Pittsburgh, the synagogue shooting, how is your city doing? And guns in Pennsylvania?
We're healing, and I thank you and for referencing that. We're healing. It's a strong community. We send our thoughts and prayers to those who have been victims in other parts of our country as recently as last week and other parts of the world. These are horrific acts of hate and radical nationalism and extremism that have no place in our world in a civilized nation. Pennsylvania has laws in place at the state level. I commend Mayor Peduto and Councilman Corey O'Connor for a well-intended effort to address the problem. But as an attorney, I can tell you that the doctrine of preemption will cause their gun legislation to be struck down. It's just how I see it. And what preemption is, it's a constitutional theory that if you already have a law in place at a higher level of government, lower levels of government cannot enact legislation that is more restrictive on already existing laws at a higher governmental level. Mayor Peduto's legislation enacts more restrictions at the city level that are restrictive in nature, more restrictive than what already exists at the state and higher levels. So based on the doctrine of preemption, this law inevitably, in my opinion, will be struck down.
And finally...
yeah.
Sorry, brother. Didn't mean to cut you off. The best Batman ever.
The best Batman ever? Ooh, that's tough. I'm a big Michael Keaton fan because he's from Pittsburgh. I loved him in the first Batman. Jack Nicholson was an awesome Joker, but sorry, Michael Keaton, but Christian Bale in the Dark Knight trilogy with Heath Ledger as the Joker, that might be the culmination of the Dark Knight film series. I just don't know how they get past that. I'm kind of intrigued by I can't think of his name now. He's going to be the Joker in a standalone show coming out. He played Johnny Cash. I can't think of his name now.
I'm with you. Yeah, that guy.
Did you see the? If you saw the trailer,
that's
Kevin,
what happens with age. Yes.
There it is, Ecclesiastes. Look at the trailer, Kevin. You'll thank me.
I will, but it's tough call. Christian Bale or Adam West.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, Adam West is like the Jack Nicklaus of Batman. You can't touch him. Okay, everybody but Adam West. I should have put a caveat on that. You're right.
Jim Byrne, we always appreciate you. It's Joaquin Phoenix, by the way.
Oh, Joaquin Phoenix. Yes. Look at if you're a Batman fan or a fan of that comic strip, look at the trailer for this. How a normal man turned into the clown prince of crime. It's fantastic.
My man, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you, and bless you and all your listeners. Take care.
God bless. Thank you, Jim.
Bye.
Our great friend Jim Byrne joining us. At one time, the chairman of the State Democratic Party in Pennsylvania. Does anybody know who the State Democratic Party chairman is in Idaho? Do they exist? Maybe they do. Well, appreciate Jim's insight. Phone number is here, 580-5436. 580-KIDO. By the way, who needs the Avengers when you've got Batman and the Joker? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And in the state of Texas, their House of Representatives okays removing jail time for small amounts of marijuana. By the way, a lot of pro-pot people seem to be enamored with the goal of this show, which is to keep Idaho drug-free. It's amazing getting some likes on the Facebook, the Twitter, that sort of thing. And look, our pledge to you is we will do everything we can to support law enforcement and to support people that want to keep Idaho drug-free and away from turning our beloved parks and recreational areas and hiking areas into stinky marijuana fields. Traffic and weather together. Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave.
Can you imagine Sleepy Joe, Crazy Bernie, or can you imagine any of these people up here doing what I'm doing? There'd be 200 people show up if they were president. If they weren't president, nobody would show up.
There we have it. The president of the United States fighting back. Joe Biden coming out and saying he's going to be the man. Joe's having some issues. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's go to your phone calls. Liberty Linda joins us now. Good morning, Liberty Linda.
Good morning, Kevin. You know, Kevin, you could make a cartoon about what's going on in our country today, and no one would believe it. You know, the Democrats going completely communistic, then actually so many of them going after our president that has done absolutely nothing but good for the United States. We're sitting back here watching this, and we're thinking, what's going on? And now, you know, President Trump has actually done more for our world than any other president, I believe. So, Kevin, I believe we should get behind our President Trump 100% now. We ought to start going out there and rooting for him and doing everything we can to make sure he gets reelected. And
I don't know about that. I heard you were going with Crazy Bernie.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Crazy Bernie. Yeah, well, he has a good name, Crazy Bernie. I'll go for that, you know. But anyway, I think that when President Trump steps down, I say Tommy Alquist should be our next president. And Kevin, guess what? I think you should be our vice president. I'll go for that. Well, you got my vote, Kevin.
Well, you're making me blush.
So, Kevin, you see everything the way it should be. You know, no marijuana, you know, in Idaho. We don't need to legalize that. We've got enough problems. And
well, I could be the John Adams to Tommy Alquist's George Washington.
Absolutely. I think you would be a great vice president. So Tommy Alquist and Kevin Miller, I can see it now. Anyway.
Well, you heard it here first.
Yes, and then we'll hear it again as well.
Well, Liberty Linda, thank you very much.
I mean it. You are, you know, we love you, Kevin, and I think you'd be a wonderful vice president.
Well, thank you. You have a good day.
Okay, you as well. Bye-bye.
Bye, and we'll make sure we have a cabinet position there for Liberty Linda. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Coming up, a couple things going on. You know, our thoughts and prayers go to the victims that were killed in this synagogue shooting. And you have many people trying to blame the president for it, saying it was the president's language that provoked this deranged individual. Other people saying it's white nationalism, white supremacy. But what they aren't talking about are the heroes that, when confronted with either saving the life of someone else or saving themselves, chose the greatest gift that one can give to put yourself in harm's way for the life of a friend, for the life of a stranger. Why aren't the folks in the media talking about the courage to face the end and to do so to save lives, instead of trying to, once again, blame President Trump? How many of us would throw ourselves in the line of fire to protect a stranger, a friend, an enemy? And in light of what's happening in houses of worship, is it time that in America, like we should have in schools, we have armed guards or conceal and carry at local houses of worship? Think about that. Then I invite you to join the conversation at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. That's 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie. So blessed to be with you. Kevin Miller in the morning. Out to Rachel Sutherland, Fox News Radio. Heard for her reports on being on the road covering Joe Biden. Say it ain't so, Joe. Rachel, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, Joe Biden was here at the Teamster Temple and really appealing to blue-collar workers, unionized workers, and going after President Trump. He's trying to pick off those folks who may have been lifelong Democrats but flipped to vote for President Trump in 2016. It could be a tall order, though, because the economy has really come back, and people here, I've talked to some who are still in the Trump camp, even though they've been lifelong Democrats. So this is really going to be a battleground state in 2020.
And where you're at is very unique. I guess the term would be applicable, having worked there for a few years and lived there for a few more. It's I think that would be like one of the breadbaskets of the old Reagan Democrats. They're Democrats, but they're not your East or West Coast Democrats.
Oh, absolutely. These are folks who, many of them unionize, some not so much, because I understand there's a lot of technology springing up here, tech companies, things like that, revitalizing. But they are definitely more conservative in general, even if in Democrat name. You get that feeling here for sure that this is still a family-based town, people who work, their jobs and go home to their families, go to church on Sunday. And I think, though, that Joe Biden is doing his best to appeal to people in Pittsburgh, but in largely Pennsylvania. And he went back to his roots in Scranton, where he spent his early years. And it seemed like folks, he was well received. The question is, can he bring back those kind of more conservative Democrats into the fold? And one thing I thought was interesting is when he talked about health care, he separated himself out from the pack a bit and talked about Americans having the option to buy into Medicare if they want to, or keep their private insurance. But the question I would have is, what would happen to private insurance companies if that option were allowed? It may sound good in theory, but when it comes down to it, the new slogan may be, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. I'm not so sure about that.
Right. I think we've been there before. Back to Pittsburgh, was it like, and again, many people are Pittsburgh Steelers fans here. It's one of the, if not the nation's team. Certainly people from across the country make the pilgrimage to the Berg, if you will. And there's a lot of technology there. But in some cases, and I watched the event on C-SPAN, it was almost like going back in time when you're in that Union Hall. Was it?
Oh, no doubt. The Union Hall, it was definitely like stepping back in time, and particularly in that part of Pittsburgh, this is Butler Street. It has been revitalized in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot of cute shops and eateries and stuff like that, but still you definitely get an old school feel. I mean, I liked it. It was interesting. The people, it's almost like in Pittsburgh that they can spot an outsider about a mile away. There's definitely that, but the architecture beautiful and definitely revitalizing, but you still have that kind of old town kind of feel to it.
Indeed. And how many people did you spot wearing Pittsburgh Steelers gear?
I haven't seen that many wearing it, but I've seen an awful lot of it for sale. Yesterday, it was all about, there's a lot of T-shirts, firefighters for Biden, things like that. But quite frankly, most of my experience here in Pittsburgh has been down there on Butler Street and in the downtown area, which is, it's just people going to work and living their daily lives.
Well, make sure you get a Permante's brother if you can. I'm sure they've been telling you about that. Or that is the world famous sandwich there.
Does it have French fries on it?
Yes.
Okay, I've heard about that. I will, on my way out, get one.
There's one downtown, so probably not too far from where you are.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin.
You know the news. I know the food. It's a great partnership.
Well, thanks for the tip. Absolutely.
Safe travels, Rachel.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, our great friend Rachel Sutherland. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's get the latest concerning the fallout of that California synagogue shooting.
The 19-year-old college student arrested for shooting 4 people and killing one inside the Chabad synagogue in Poway, California, is due to be arraigned in a California state court today. John Ernest is charged with murdering Lori Gilbert Kay, 3 counts of attempted murder and a single count of arson related to a mosque burning for which he's believed to take credit for in online writings. Those posts claim the shooting was in defense of white Christians who he says are under threat by Jews. Eben Brown, Fox News.
And so then we have people blaming President Trump for this. But before we get to that, let's take a look and let's take a listen here at KIDO Talk Radio on someone who made a difference. And this is a former U.S. Army combat veteran. His name is Oscar Stewart. He spoke out about the weekend's deadly shooting at the synagogue in California. Many people are calling him a hero after he confronted the gunman, John Ernest, who's in custody, as you just heard, in connection with the shooting. Stewart, speaking on our great friends Fox and Friends, said he didn't believe the shooter had a lot of experience. And again, this is a man who was a combat veteran that ran towards the fire instead of running away from it.
He didn't know what he was doing. His muzzle flashes, they were very sporadic. You saw that he was not he was not a stable shooter. He didn't have a lot of experience. He was holding the weapon in a manner that he didn't have control of it. And so I remember that clearly because I kept an eye on the weapon. I was looking at the barrel, making sure it was, making sure I was not in its way.
Right. And how many lives did Mr. Stewart save?
When I exited the sanctuary of the synagogue, he was in the lobby. He discharged his firearm twice. I saw the muzzle flashes, and as I ran towards him, I yelled out, as loud as I could. Every inch of my body mustered this noise. And he looked at me. He had a look of, fear. He dropped his weapon to his side. He had a tactical sling, so it didn't fall to the ground. He turned around, and he ran out of the building.
Like a coward when confronted.
I heard the gunshots, and I knew what gunshots were, unfortunately. I stood up, and I was going to run like everyone else, and I took maybe 1-2 steps, and at the last, and I don't know why, I turned around and I ran towards the gunfire.
He ran towards the gunfire. We don't really hear about Mr. Stewart's story. Now, again, thanks to Fox and Friends, we do hear from the heroic young man. And many of us would hope and pray that we would do the same thing, right? That we would do the very best. But unfortunately at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, you have people looking to become opportunistic. People looking to make this tragedy part of a political advantage and blaming President Donald Trump for this. How can you blame President Trump when you had the writings of this lunatic saying that Mr. Trump was too friendly to Israel? Now, you can talk about the comments of Representative Omar. You could talk about the comments and share the comments during the Obama administration when you had the beginning of the rise of the anti-Semitism movement that we're seeing in this country and around the world, where you had Mr. Obama was cozy up to the enemies of Israel and gave Israel the Heisman, the cold shoulder. We're all responsible for our actions. Obviously, this person has some issues. But how does it impact us here in the Treasure Valley? At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. How does it make a difference when we're talking about being safe? How many of us have thought, do I need to take a weapon with me when I go to church? When I go to pray? God's house is where we come and we thank the Lord for everything that we have. And yet you have people that are preying on the sheep. Many churches, from what I hear locally, have covert security teams that no one really knows about, but they go out, they train to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Right now in this country, and you compare them to what Al-Qaeda or ISIS clerics said that inspired attacks around the world over the last decade, they would look remarkably similar. This is incitement to violence in many cases.
Are you talking about Donald Trump here, enemy of the people? And
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Talking about people as animals or dogs, talking about people as being lesser humans. That sort of talk is highly similar to any extremist movement.
We have, in some ways, a president that is embracing a segment of the population that literally has the country by the throat, Joe. And we have to do something about this, or we're going to see even more die.
We are so far beyond dog whistles here, Donald. We are so far beyond dog whistles. The blood that is spilled is on your hands. From white nationalists, from people that listen to that sort of rhetoric. Any violence to journalists, you are just inciting violence. It's just obvious. We're calling it out now. You are unfit to be president of the United States.
There we have it. Our friend Joe Scarborough on MSNBC exercising his First Amendment freedoms. Pete in Mountain Home with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pete.
Kevin, I wish I hadn't listened to Joe Scarborough. I feel slightly nauseous now. I would like to say that what happened down there in Poway, California, and what has happened in many of these mass shootings, I go back to the one in San Bernardino County by the two Islamic terrorists killing the people that they worked with. Anyone who is old enough and trained enough to carry a concealed firearm and isn't doing it, you're making a big mistake. That is absolutely the best, most effective way of responding to something like that, if it happens where you are. And then changing the subject briefly, back to your support for the schools, I think this summer you might want to do a segment out of the Northwest Lineman's College, south of Meridian. You talk about essential personnel, and I put the people that keep the power grid right up there with the police and the fire department and the military. You try living without electric power for a week or two. Those people that are up there in blizzards and all sorts of weather, keeping the power grid going, I'd like to see a segment on that Lineman's College down there.
And the great thing about the Lineman's College right there outside of Kuna is you graduate there, you've got an instant job.
Oh, and well-paying instant job.
Big money.
I'll tell you what, you look at those guys going up those transmission towers in a blizzard, they aren't getting paid enough.
I would agree. Pete, thank you for the call.
Thank you, Kevin.
Edwin in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Edwin.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Trying to justify my existence, Edwin, and you?
Yeah, about the same. So I carry the church, and the church that I went to actually not that long ago, I believe last year sometime, there was a gentleman that actually pulled a gun out in the lobby here in Boise. Now, I come from California. I'm one of those ones, but I'm obviously conservative. So the problem with California is that in all these states where you see these shootings, is the fact that they're in these gun-free zones. And it just amazes me how people like to blame Trump when I always like to point out to my Democrat friends going, don't you remember back, was in the 80s or 90s when Trump allowed his country club that he goes to every weekend now to be the first one to allow blacks and Jews? And Judaism isn't at the birth of Christianity, so how are they trying to say it's anti-Semitic and Trump's fault when he's a friend of Israel and, Christians flee to flock to Israel to go visit on a daily basis? It just doesn't make sense to me how the left can say that. It's like they're blind.
Well, they're blind, and quite frankly, they want to keep us blind, and they just want to rewrite history and rewrite all of us, Edwin.
And unfortunately, that's kind of how it works when you look at things like with Stalin and Hitler. They want to rewrite history, but when you look at the way Trump's doing things, he's not wanting to rewrite history, but the left is. And I carry everywhere I go. I mean, even the school, I'll sometimes keep it on my backpack and keep it in the car so it's nearby if anything happens. It's our right, and it's not just a right, it's for protection. And I don't think it will ever lose our rights to our guns, but they're sure going to try, especially with AOC.
Edwin, thank you for the call, sir.
Thank you.
Tom in Boise, hang on. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And let's quickly get to Tom in Boise. Tom, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. We unfortunately, when people gather together for a particular purpose, there's going to be people that are obviously against those purposes. So as far as Christianity or Judaism, there's going to be people that don't believe in that. And unfortunately, there's going to be those people with malintent, and you can't see intent sometimes on a person's face or what they've got maybe in a backpack. So what I've done, and a group of us have done who are ex-military and police officers, we form safety teams, and we volunteer at our congregation and things like that, and we train each other. We have a plan in place so that if unfortunately something happens in one of these mass gatherings where you're just trying to spread a message of love, and people want to show hate during that time, you can at least have a plan in place to respond. So I encourage people to step up, especially those with training, to go ahead and form safety team and be aware. We've had people show up with guns with malintent, and we've had people show up that just want to just fight, and want the end of the day. We don't want that at the end of the day, but at least we want to protect the people in the congregation. So we do have exercises. We do have mass casualty kits that are hidden, that are places that we know that they're at. So I just ask people, be proactive, realize that this is the world we live in. Whether you believe in firearms or not, you can volunteer. We have nursing and medical staff that volunteer as well. So be part of a proactive solution, and just realize you can't wish these things away. You gotta actually think about them. So you may not teach in Sunday school, but maybe you can be part of a safety team and be part of a plan.
Tom, I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Have a good morning.
And there you have it. Be prepared. We'll talk about it next. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave.
When I exited the sanctuary of the synagogue, he was in the lobby. He discharged his firearm twice. I saw the muzzle flashes, and as I ran towards him, I yelled out, as loud as I could. Every inch of my body mustered this noise. And he looked at me. He had a look of, fear. He dropped his weapon to his side. He had a tactical sling, so it didn't fall to the ground. He turned around, and he ran out of the building.
And there we have it. A real-life American hero, Oscar Stewart, stopping the gunman, saving how many lives?
And he didn't know what he was doing. His muzzle flashes, they were very sporadic. You saw that he was not he was not a stable shooter. He didn't have a lot of experience. He was holding the weapon in a manner that he didn't have control of it. And so I remember that clearly because I kept an eye on the weapon. I was looking at the barrel, making sure it was, making sure I was not in its way.
There we have it. Mr. Stewart, a role model, saving lives and not running away like we're inclined to do. Of course, this type of courage is necessary in the world that we live in today, regardless of your house of worship. Obviously, we're praying for the survivors and the people we lost in that deadly synagogue shooting. More coming up next on your home for Fox News on the radio in the Treasure Valley. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning.